afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Poison Pen. This is a really historic event. Welcome. You're in such a treat today. This is the first ever, those are in giant caps, bookstore appearance that includes every single member, all 7 of the Jungle Red blob. I know you didn't write that, did you, Hank? You said blog.
No.
They're each of
I
the
feel
Jungle.
that way.
They're each of the Jungle Red bloggers: Jenn McKinlay, Hank Phillippi Ryan, Hallie Ephron, Lucy Burdette, Julia Spencer-Fleming, Deborah Crombie, and Rhys Bowen have been here to the pen in person. Never in our history, or in any other bookstore's history, have they all appeared together. So exciting. This stellar, which is Hank's new favorite adjective, this stellar and iconic group of mystery authors has been blogging together for 10 years now. And if you add it all up, they have 128 years of writing experience and have published a breathtaking 161 novels. They have won individually and repeatedly every award in the mystery world, been the guests of honor at every mystery convention, and most important, they've been the best of friends from the beginning. We are so delighted that they chose the pen for their first ever bookstore appearance. Each of them has a brand new book out now, all of which are available for you to order here. Sorry, that's the commercial break there. Yeah. So we are thrilled to introduce them for this spectacular event, and of course they will take questions, so be ready for that. I'm now going to hand it over to our moderator for this afternoon, Hank Phillippi Ryan. So have fun.
Thanks, Barbara. Thank you. You know, it's so funny to talk about me as the moderator, as if this group could ever be moderated. There's no
good luck, Hank.
We already, the peanut gallery is started. No moderation about it. But welcome, 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 all of you. We're so happy to see all of you. And I have to say, I'm kind of thrilled to see all of you Reds here. We have not gotten together on Zoom for a couple of months, and so much has happened, and so many things have developed, and so many new books have come out, and it's really a wonderful joy to get to be here with all of you and all of you at home today. I hope you're safe and well. It's interesting, when I knew that we were coming today, I looked up to see how many views we'd had, and since we started, we've now had 7.7 million views on the blog. So you all know that Jungle Red is the place to go for things about books and writing and the world and wonderful guests and wonderful new books and recipes and new puppies. Lucy, raise your hand. And all kinds of everything you ever wanted to know about your world and your life. And we are there at Jungle Red Writers every single day for 10 years. Somebody do the math about that. So since there are 7 of us and since we have 1 hour, we're going to go fast. So what I'm going to do is, because we're the Reds and we always have a game, we'll make it be a game show. Now I just realized that let me see if I can see the chat. If I can see the chat, can I see the chat? No. Okay, so here was our clever plan was to have you guess the first lines of all the books, but now we can't see you guessing, so much for that idea. So we're going to still do this. I'm going to read the first line of a book. You decide whose book you think this is, and then I'll call on the real author. How about this one? She'd never been much of a sleeper. A good thing, she supposed, since getting by with a little rest was a major requirement for a cook. Who wrote that? All right, Deb is smiling. That is A Bitter Feast by Deborah Crombie. So tell us a little bit about the book and whether you had that first line to begin with, and you have 2 whole minutes.
Thank you, Hank. I don't remember. I think maybe that was the first line in the book. It's set in the Cotswolds, and my Scotland Yard detectives, Duncan Kincaid and Gemma James, go away from London to the country for supposedly a restful weekend, and then there is a tragic accident and a poisoning, and the weekend does not go as planned.
So do you have to have read the first in the series to read this?
No, I think this book stands alone really well. It was kind of a break after things that happened in previous stories, so it's perfectly fine to start with the 18th.
And there's so many wonderful dishes in this. It makes you hungry to read it.
Oh, I have a professional chef. Yeah, they're two professional chefs. I was really interested in writing about women in the kitchen, and but I have to admit that I didn't cook all the wonderful food in the book.
Even better, even better. You don't have to, right? You can just write about it and taste it. That's great. All right, line number 2. Emily Harlow wasn't convinced that her sock drawer sparked joy. Okay, you know who that is, because that's no, that's Hallie Ephron's "Careful What You Wish For," with the cover right cleverly behind her at her home in Milton, Massachusetts. Hallie, did you have that first line from the very beginning? And tell us a little bit about the book.
I did. I've been writing about being married to a guy who didn't miss a yard sale without stopping for decades. Before I even thought I would be writing fiction, I was writing essays complaining about him. So it just seemed like the perfect fit for a mystery novel, a woman who is a professional organizer married to a professional collector who can't get rid of anything. That's conflict, and of course there is a dead body somewhere, that's the very first line I came up with. What's amazing is it was before Marie Kondo had started publishing. I tweaked it to spark joy at the end, but it was basically that line. And then, of course, I wanted it to echo her because she's such a phenomenon. And
interesting too, because when someone is an organizer, they're used to being in control, but of course we can't control our own lives.
Yes, well, there's a couple in the book. There are 3 couples in the book, and one of the couples is a woman who's married to a man who won't let her bring any of the things she owned before they were married into their house, except her personal, her cosmetics and her toothbrush. And that's the thing about things, is your relationship with your stuff can be one of controlling other people's stuff versus, wanting to organize your own stuff versus having a collection and wanting every single slot filled with the best of the best. We all have our relationships to the objects, and as we're looking at all of our backgrounds here, you can make draw a few conclusions about our relationship to our stuff.
And everybody knows that your husband Jerry is an inveterate collector. How does he feel about the book about the woman married to the collector?
Well, that's the great thing about him, is he's fine.
That's great. That's great.
I'll tell you a very quick story about Jerry, and then I'll let you go to the next person. But when my husband was on the faculty at Curry College, there was a dispute about someone in the department. He was the chair, Jerry was the chair, and he got this letter that was copied to him from the dean with this guy complaining about the way Jerry was running the division. And people kept saying to Jerry, "Aren't you going to respond to it? Aren't you going to respond?" And he said, "I think it speaks for itself." He is mellow.
Laughable.
That's right. Well, we love him, and he is incredible good sport.
But he's not the guy in the book. He's not.
Right.
He's also smart enough to know.
Right. You see, all of us are going, "Oh yes, okay, Hallie, he's not the guy in the book." Okay. All right. Another read novel is this. To whom does our island belong? I found myself wondering that as I sat on my scooter in the rain, late for my pricey but absolutely necessary for a person who eats for a living personal trainer, attempting to cross a massive traffic jam on Eaton Street. Lucy is trying to keep a straight face. I know, but that is
That would be pretty obvious.
That's
right?
brand new, absolutely spanking brand new, key lime crime. And I love that you said it on Eaton Street. Haha, I saw what you did there. Did you always have that first line? And tell us a little bit about this brand new book.
No, I didn't even think of that until you were asking the other reads, but I realized that the theme of this book was that question, who owns this island? Because in Key West, it's a constant tug and push, because the people who come to visit for New Year's Eve and Christmas, they think it's their Key West, And yet there is a whole bunch of people who live on the island full time who know that it's not. So it's a perfect setup for conflict there too.
And why did you decide to make your main character, Hallie, a food critic?
That was easy because at the time Penguin was looking for a series featuring a food critic. So I love to eat. I'm like Hallie and Debs and most of the Reds. And I love to read about food and talk about food, so I didn't think I would have any trouble making this up.
And the series is ongoing. And Key West seems like such a perfect place to have a setting for a book.
Yes. This is number 10, but it's like Deb's. You can read it by itself. I try to make the mystery stand alone. The characters, of course, have changed over 10 books. Hallie starts out as a dizzy, early 20-something single woman, and now she's married. Some of the characters have really evolved, like Miss Gloria, who's everyone's favorite senior citizen. She started out looking kind of hapless and demented, and now she's a mainstay of the island. So that's my favorite thing about writing the series, is watching the people change over time and surprise me.
Well, you're doing that, you know.
I know, but
I know that's the magic thing about this, is that we think, look what that character did, and we're like, wait, I did that. So
Yeah.
that's great, Lucy. Congratulations on your new book. Hold that up one more time, because you have the newest of the new, Heel and Crime. That's great. Yay. All right. Another line. He had parked his cruiser in the muddy verge of the county highway, a little way from the circus that was going on up the road. Julie, I can see you blushing there up in your gorgeous house. Tell us a little bit about Hid from Our Eyes. And again, part of the series, but you can read it as a standalone.
Yeah, although I always suggest people buy all the books in the series, probably 2 copies, just to be sure.
yeah.
But yes, hopefully you can read it, as a standalone, because each one is an independent mystery. So that opening actually does not introduce my hero or heroine. It introduces one of the secondary characters, because Hid from Our Eyes takes place in the 1970s, or in the 1950s, and the 1970s, and then in the present day, with 3 identical murders that 3 different police chiefs are struggling to solve, and the first 2 don't, and the final one hopefully will by the end of the book. But I had always wanted, they say never start your book with weather, right? But as I write about this part of upstate New York in the Adirondacks, where weather is just such an ever-present component of people's lives. I realize when I look over, a lot of my openings have weather, if not in the first sentence, then at least in the first paragraph, because
your first book had that iconic first line.
Yeah, it was a hell of a night to throw away a baby, and we go right in. It's cold and it's snowy and it's icy. In this case, it's hot and it's muggy and it's rainy because it's August.
And quickly, your 2 main characters, though.
Russ Sinclair. Yeah, Russ Sinclair. Russ is the town's chief of police. And in this book, he is not only trying to solve the mystery, but he is trying to handle the very complicated politics, because the very existence of the police department is on the line. They're putting it up to vote whether they want to abolish the department or not. And Claire, who is the town's Episcopal priest and is fairly newly wed to Russ, is struggling because they are new parents. And she is one of these perfectionists, not that any of us would recognize that, who is trying to do everything perfectly all at once, and just winds up trying to keep it together.
Well, I mean, and people who love your books love Claire and Russ and love watching their relationship. So a super relationship first line. Let me read you another red first line, which is a short one, which is, I'm getting married.
Sorry.
I tried to read it in a male voice. That's Jenn McKinlay's. Paris is always a good idea. Her breakout women's fiction, really hilarious, amazing. Yes, applause for the bravery and everything else that goes into this wonderful book. Was that always the first line? And tell us a little bit about Paris is always a good idea.
It was my first lines are usually where the book evolves in my head. It lands right in my head with the first line, usually. I feel like the outlier because it's romantic comedy. Nobody's murdered. Spoiler. But you do get to go to Ireland and Paris and Italy. Yeah. It's the strangest book for me because I was waiting on one of my sons and it downloaded into my head fully formed. Wow. I know you all hate me. I know.
Yes, we do. Was it was it because you were thinking about searching for happiness or second chances or doing something over or a decision you'd made in the past that you regretted?
Not so much me. I mean, for me, my life at 30, I hit a crossroads personally, not anywhere near as dramatic as this, but in the course of a couple months, I broke up with my fiance at the time. We'd been together for 9 years. I took a new job. I fired my literary agent. Standard 30 stuff. So 30 to me was always kind of, it's a crossroads. Like if your life isn't going the way you want it to, it's kind of the witching year, you know? It's like, how am I gonna right the ship to what I really want? And it worked out for me, which is great. But with this book, I had just come from a funeral of a cousin I was very good friends with. It's actually my husband's cousin. We flew up to Denver and back in a day, so I was exhausted. I was taking my son to school, and I was thinking about, she was my age, we shared a name, we were both Jens, and I was just thinking about, a life cut short, and she has two beautiful kids, that are the same age as my sons, because we pretty much did everything at the same, in lockstep, and I just thought about grief and loss, and how do you get over it, and how long does loss resonate? Well, come to find out personally, a really long time.
I know. It just you handle it with humor.
Yeah,
I read your book and I'm laughing out loud through it. So it is such a joyous sort of allowing of emotions. So congratulations on that. It's getting huge buzz. All right, a couple more lines. Speaking of romance, last night I had a strange dream. I dreamed that I was mistress of an enormous house. Rhys, that sounds a little familiar. That has a little subtext. Tell us about the last Mrs. Summers.
Well, this whole book is a spoof on Rebecca. I decided that it was, Rebecca's was one of those. I think it was one of the first adult books that I ever read that sort of played with my emotions, and I realized the power of what you could do with a story. And I go to Cornwall every summer, so I'm driving past all these lovely headlands and spooky houses and things. I stay in my sister-in-law's 14th century manor, which has the haunted room and 3 staircases and all the other things. So, this is familiar to me, so I thought...
Oh, you're frozen. Rhys is frozen. I know that she was talking about being in Cornwall, and this is a spook, as she said on the okay, go ahead. Rhys, you froze for a second, so you were talking about going to Cornwall, and now we don't hear you. Sorry.
It keeps saying your internet is unstable. I think we have fires near us, and that probably doesn't work well. The air quality is awful today.
So you were talking about the 3 staircases in the haunted room. And...
So, that place is very familiar to me, and I thought, Georgie's been to Africa. She went to Kenya last year for her honeymoon. I thought we need to root her very clearly back in England today. And we haven't seen her best friend Belinda for a while. I thought, what if those two go off and have an adventure together? And what if they wind up at a house very similar to Manderley? And what if there's a very creepy housekeeper? And what if the first Mrs. Summers had somehow died mysteriously and people all tell them little things? So it was great fun to write, because if you've read Rebecca, you'll know the whole homage in the thing. I've really enjoyed it. It was really fun to write.
So this is a Georgie book, but you put her in a sort of a new Rebecca. Did you go back and read the Du Maurier before you wrote it?
I did. You know what? We were in England, and I went to a used bookstore in Truro in Cornwall, and I found a first edition Rebecca there. So I picked it up. So the rest of our trip, I was going to Venice because I was writing a Venice book. So all the way on the trip there, I read Rebecca again, and that was one of the things that happened. Was when I read it as a teenager, you know, I was really caught up in it. Now I was really angry with this the second Mrs. De Winter, whose name we never know.
Right.
I kept thinking, why doesn't this woman stand up for herself? If they say that the vase has always stood there, I'd say, too bad, it's my house now, but she never does.
Well, that's because you're Rhys and she is
yeah.
So you got to make your new woman be different from the...
Yeah, I mean, what I wanted to do was to take everything you knew about Rebecca and then turn it on its head so that, you know, you expect what's going to happen, and of course it doesn't. So these books are funny, but at the same time, I wanted this to be spooky, you know, with the housekeeper and everything. And I just enjoyed the whole Cornishness of it, you know, those little narrow lanes and the strange characters you get in Cornwall. Like Georgie goes to ask someone the way, and he says to her, "Round little rumps," and she says, "How dare you," and stalks away. And then her friend says, "Oh yeah, that's right, it's that headland's called Little Rumps." So, you know, she...
Oh, well, she can be touchy. She can be touchy. I'm going to do one more line from Guess Whose book, but I feel that you didn't get enough time to talk about your book because we've all taken a little bit longer than we were going to. So going back to A Bitter Feast, what is the key element then of A Bitter... Yes, there you do. Hold it up. It's so beautiful and golden. Like the buildings,
Yeah.
In where this takes place in lower.
My agent actually did not like this cover. Kept saying it's brown. Nobody will buy a brown book. And my editor and I kept saying, no, it's gold. It's the Cotswolds.
And that's where, I mean, the stone in the Cotswolds and the villages in the Cotswold almost glow from that gold. So it's so perfect. Did you visit the Cotswolds before you went?
I did. I visited the Cotswolds on the first trip I ever made to England with my parents back in the 70s, and I actually stayed with my parents in a country house hotel in Lower Slaughter, which actually was Upper Slaughter, but where the book is set. So when I decided all these years later that it would be fun to set a book in the Cotswolds, I hired a car, I drove around all the little villages looking for the perfect setting, and when I got to Lower Slaughter, that was it. It had to be. How could you resist a village called Lower Slaughter?
I know, it's just meant for a murder mystery. That's definitely true. Well, it's terrific. I'm going to read one more line, and that I know this is not going to be much of a quiz for you all. But the first line of The First to Lie is, "Lies have a complicated half-life, and Nora, for now, tried to calculate the lifespan of her most recent one as she stood at the corner of Tremont and Union Park, the evening's first snowflakes accumulating on her new, to her, black cashmere coat." And that is The First to Lie. That introduces, lies have a complicated half-life. I absolutely knew that line was the first line, and it's never changed. And I remember when I thought of it, I got out of the car in our driveway, and I said to my husband, "Oh, lies have a complicated half-life." And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "This is the first line of my book. It's the first line of my book because, it's all about duplicity, and it's all about being someone else, and it's all about going undercover, and it's all about pretending. But the thing about pretending is that you have to remember what you said. The thing about lying is that you have to remember your lies, and also remember that other people are going to remember parts of them too, different parts, and they're going to put together your story differently. And so I've written a book, The First to Lie, that I can't talk about. I can't tell you anything about it. Even if you say, who's the main character, I can't tell you that, which seemed like such a good idea at the time. But the five elements of the first to lie. are a devastating childhood betrayal, what I can tell you, a devastating childhood betrayal, an undercover reporter who's in too deep, a beautiful sailboat on the Chesapeake Bay, a rich and powerful family that owns a pharmaceutical company, and an ice pick that is not used for ice. So it's two strong women facing off in a high-stakes psychological cat and mouse game to get revenge for a terrible betrayal. But which woman is the cat and which woman is the mouse? And that is the first to lie. So yes, Julia.
I have a question, if I can ask them, that I was thinking when I read First to Lie, which I think if anybody hears that first line, I mean, how can you not be hooked? And you have to keep turning the pages to find out what's going on. But I was wondering, because you have this long and very distinguished career as a reporter, did you ever go sort of, undercover or anything like that, where you were not being perfectly truthful and straightforward with who you were?
I can't.
You can tell us about.
I can't tell you. I mean, yes, I have many times. I've been a television reporter for 43 years, and I have gone undercover with a hidden camera and in disguise. And I can talk about that a little bit later, but I also want to say that what I learned from that was that when you go undercover, just as we've all felt in writing novels, you have to actually believe that you're the other person. You actually, with 99.9% of yourself, you have their motivations, you have their reactions, you have their desires, you have their goals. And then with that little tiny leftover percent, you're like, am I getting the wide shot? Am I getting the tight shot? Am I getting this person to say what I need them to say? Is my camera really rolling? Am I going to get caught? How fast can I get back to the station with the story? So it's an interesting balance. But the key to me was, in this book, was that we're all undercover every moment of every day, unless we're by ourselves. I speak to you all in a different way than I speak to my husband or my boss or a stranger, and that's undercover too. And that's what I wanted to show. That's what I wanted to show in this book. Thank you, Julia. So let's go on to hear more about our books. It's interesting, talking to you all about how our books are so different, and you can hear our different voices in them. And I know the audience wants to know more, but we don't have too much time. Oh, yikes, I see the time clicking away. So there's a cool thing on Twitter, if that's not an oxymoron, about tell about your book in 4 words. Can you describe your book in 4 words? So each of us, let's do that. And then tell maybe the first moment you thought of the idea for this book, or what was the pivotal gem, the core of the book, or what you wanted people to take from it at the end. So 4 words about your book, and then a little bit more. And because you're next to me in the Brady Bunch checkerboard here,
okay.
You go first, and then you can toss it to whoever you want.
Okay. So my 4 words, and then say a little more. Yeah, okay. So my 4 words are Santa, key lime pie, that's counting as 1.
That's counting.
Mother-in-law, and T-Bone.
Oh.
So T-Bone is my rescued yellow tiger cat, and his origin story is in this book. The character actually goes to the SPCA and finds that cat and brings him into the story. The mother-in-law, to me, was the most interesting. I always start a book by saying what's happening in the characters' lives and how can I develop that so it's more interesting. So it's not just murder, suspect, detective work, done. I want a lot of development of character. And I'd had some readers who complained that they didn't like Haley's new husband very well, that he seemed kind of distant and condescending and stiff, and what was the big, and I don't write like Jenn, so I couldn't put in a big sex scene that would have explained it. So I thought
She's not a slutty writer like Jenn.
or Julia. Do it. And Hallie, I know, has my same problem, which is you start to write about sex and it ends up being food. Right. Anyway, so I came up with the idea of having his mother arrive on the island in the worst possible busy moment in both of their lives. She didn't come to the wedding. Haley's very nervous about meeting her. And when a body is found in a Santa suit in a Christmas display, she becomes very interested, and so she and Haley and Miss Gloria become the amateur sleuths against what the husband Nathan would want in any way.
And so do we love the husband at the end of the book?
I love him. I don't know. I think it does help explain. And also the book that I have to send in a week and a half, she's in it again. So as Hallie said to me last week or so, she's a very strong character, and I hope she doesn't take over. So we'll see.
That's the power of your writing, though. You've created a great person. You've created a great character. That's okay. So toss it to whoever you want.
Jen, let's hear about sex.
4 words and a little bit about the book. Page 32.
We'll start with sex. No, it's okay. I'm gonna have to double up words. Workaholic, ex-boyfriends, work rivals, Eiffel Tower.
Oh,
Nice.
So it's a woman, like I said, who hit 30 and then decides she's lost her happiness. So she goes back to the year where she was most happy, and she had 3 loves of her life when she was working across Europe. So she decides to go find them. So it's Colin in Ireland and Jean-Claude in Paris and Marcellino in Tuscany. So which one is the sexy boy?
oh, and we find that out on page 42 right now. So, was it fun to write?
It was a blast. I picked places I'd been, and I actually crammed in a trip to Paris so I could really get the Eiffel Tower. Correct.
Always a good idea.
Always. And it was just so much fun to revisit places that I love and be able to do it with humor. And when you're writing, it's exactly what you were saying before. You take on the character. Well, I'm 53, so writing a 30-year-old.
Yay! But a 30-year-old now, not a 30-year-old when you were 30, right?
Yeah, that's a little challenging because sometimes they say stuff I'm like, what are you talking about? So luckily I have 2 young men that can decode everything.
That's great. Well, the buzz about this book is just great. People are just reacting to it with exclamation marks all over the place and little hearts. So congratulations on that. So toss it to whoever you want.
Hallie.
Okay, I've got 5 words. What's in the storage unit?
Hallie is a problem from moment 1.
Yeah.
Okay, what's in the storage room is one.
How many Americans have storage units? It's absolutely. How many of you have storage units? Put your hand up. Only.
Right.
I have a barn.
Oh.
Anyway, in the book, Emily, who's a professional organizer, a one-time teacher, which I was also, turned professional organizer, has a new client. She has this older woman. She's a widow. She's been widowed for a year. She goes to her house and the first thing she notices is there's an empty cup of coffee by the recliner, this sparkle lounger that's leaning back, and on the floor is a newspaper from almost exactly a year ago. And she realizes that this poor woman has not been able to move any of the items that belonged to her husband, who died in that room. And it's, I wanted to get at the real connection we have to stuff through. And I know, oh my goodness, that sounds so heavy. Anyway, one of the things that she discovers is that there's a storage unit that her husband had that she didn't know anything about. And so the story involves Emily investigating what's in the storage unit. And there's more than a few surprises in there.
And we all, and we all write about secrets, and what could be more secret than a secret room? It's just.
I'll tell you a secret, there's no severed heads.
Good. That's good. That's good. So toss it to whoever you want.
Okay, I'm gonna go for me over there. Rhys.
Okay, my 4 words, that's easy. It's Georgie, Belinda, Rebecca revisited.
That's great.
That's pretty much all I need to say. I wanted to get into a book where you've got, I mean, the Georgie books are funny. You know, she's for those of you who don't know, I'm sure there are people on the planet who haven't quite found her yet. She's related to the royal family. Her branch is completely penniless. She's been trying to find her own way for 14 books now. She's finally married to a really cool guy called Darcy. And so it looks like life is smooth from now on. So I thought it was about time that we did something with her friend Belinda, who's had a very checkered, naughty life. We'll go back to the sex now. I thought it'd be fun if they had a girl adventure, because the last time she was with her husband in Kenya. So, and I love, well, who wouldn't want to keep revisiting Cornwall? You know, this summer, I have to tell you, I've been reading the book myself and looking at all the pictures and going, I should have been there now, and no, I'm not. You know, it's been very hard. So going to Cornwall, finding that spooky house, and finding the whole secrets of it. Now, some people know this and some people know that, and there's the housekeeper, and what does she know? And then, of course, there's going to be a body because it's a murder mystery, you know, and it won't be the body anybody expects. And it looks like Belinda could be guilty, and George. So it was fun. It was one of those, I suppose you'd almost call it a romp. It was a homage Rebecca romp is probably what it is.
It's great. Well, it's so much fun to read. Okay, toss it, Rhys, to anyone you want.
I'm tossing it to Deborah.
Oh, 4 words.
4 words and a little bit more.
Scotland Yard, Cotswolds, celebrity chefs, and tragic car accident.
Is that in 1 word?
That's 7 words.
Well, I knew you were going to count.
Long book, though. It's a long book.
It's ideas, right?
Yeah.
And so what did you want readers to take from this? How do you want readers to think about this? It's a family secret. It's a book about family secrets.
It's a book about relationships, really. I mean, I think all my books are basically about relationships, but it's about the relationships between all my main characters, because they were all sort of at cross purposes in the last book. And I thought it would be fun to put everybody sort of on the same page, in the same place, investigating the same crime, because I not only have my 2 married detectives, Duncan and Gemma, but I also have their professional partners. So all 4 of them go off for a country house weekend, and which is supposed to be a really relaxing getaway. And then there is a tragic car accident. And things get very complicated, and of course they don't get their weekend off. But the other main thread in this book was I was really interested in female chefs with women in the kitchen, in the professional kitchen, because it's such a demanding job. And I think women chefs who are successful have to be very driven and very single-minded, and people who have those kind of personality traits tend to sort of attract trouble, which is what happens in this book. So lots of relationships. And there are a couple of sex scenes, which I really rather liked.
You all have been talking. It's interesting, just sort of parenthetically, I was making a video for Deb's book, For a Bitter Feast, and I was looking for stock photos of female chefs to put in it. And there just weren't any. The female chef photos were all cartoons or like, you know, triumphant, like, ooh, I did this, sweet little photos where the male chefs were in their whites and their toques and they're looking very serious, overseeing a lot of people, but the women were all cute. And it was really consciousness raising to see.
It was interesting, actually, because I spent all this time reading and creating this chef whose name is Viv Holland. And then after I had turned into the book, I went to a film and a seminar where they had like 6 or 7 local female chefs talking about the film, which was about a female chef. And the things that these women expressed in that roundtable were exactly the things that my character deals with in A Bitter Feast. So I felt like I'd done a good job.
That's great. I love it. It's so much fun when you get it right. It's really gratifying. Yeah. And that means Julia is next.
Oh, me? I am. 4 words. I think a 4-word phrase is what I would use, which is the past is present. Because this is, in this book, a lot of what happens is we get to go into the past, but what happened in the past is shaping what is going on in the future. We get to see a number of people at different stages in their lives, and hopefully you get to experience and sort of walk away with the deeper knowledge of characters. For instance, we see one of my lead characters, Russ Van Alstyne, spends a big chunk of the book. You get to see him as a very angry and kind of screwed up 20-year-old Vietnam War veteran who's just come back to the United States in the very early 70s. And he's a completely different sort of person, but he's not. You can see hints of who he was. So that was fascinating to me.
Was it wonderful or complicated to write that triple timeline?
It was really complicated. It was, at first I started out, and I know several of you who've also done books with multiple timelines, but so I started out writing kind of the way I want it to be. I had roughed out sort of not an outline, but sort of how much is going to take place in which time period. And, you know, that went by the wayside about halfway through. And so what I wound up doing was writing each section more or less independently.
Oh, wow.
And then weaving it together, and then kind of buffing and polishing it so that it looked like I brilliantly had just, the whole thing had just flown from my, out of my fingers and onto the screen.
Like a good recipe, if you get there in the end, it doesn't matter along the way how the laws and sausages are made. I'll tell you my 4 words really fast, and then I want to do a real fast round robin because I know Barbara's looking at us like tick, 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 you're running out of time. No, you're not. Okay. So my 4 words are betrayal, motherhood, obsession, and revenge. Betrayal, motherhood, obsession, and revenge. And I got the idea for a book when I was going undercover into a doctor's office, posing as a woman who wanted to get pregnant. And I had on like 3 sweatshirts and a work shirt, and in the buttonhole of my work shirt was what we call a button cam, which was a lens of a camera. And then snaking down underneath my sweatshirt was the cord to the little camera that was in a fanny pack on my back. And I was trying to see whether the doctor would lie to me about his medical malpractice history. And he absolutely lied about it. And as a result of that story, the law was changed in Massachusetts to require them to disclose that on their public record. But that got me thinking about lying. That he had lied to me to cover up something bad. But I had lied to him. I had gone in absolutely flat out misrepresenting myself and with a hidden camera, but I was doing it for good. I was doing it for a good reason. So I started thinking about, does it matter if you lie if it's for a good reason? And then a good reason for one person might be different than a good reason for someone else. And then how far, what if you decided to be someone else? What if you decided that you could get what you want by being someone else? And that was sort of the impetus of the first to lie. I mean, all that double dealing and double deception. I mean, I don't like graphic sex in books, and I don't like graphic violence in books, and I don't like inappropriate language, but I do like mind games and gaslighting and manipulation, and the idea that psychology that we use on each other is just as big a weapon as a knife or a gun. So that is the first to lie. So we have only a tiny bit more time. So let's go around and say, because I didn't know the end of the first to lie as I was writing it. That's what got me to the typewriter every day. I can't wait to find out what's going to happen. Did you all know the ends of your books? Lucy, did you know the end of your book before you started? And then just let's go around the whatever this is square.
I didn't know the end at the beginning, but usually about a third of the way in, I realize how it's going to end, and I often will write the last at least chapter and sometimes two.
Really?
And so that helps me have a target to shoot for. It happens just about every book. The one that I'm
At some point,
now, yeah.
at some point you think, oh, I know what happened, and you just
I know what happened. I know what's going to happen between these people on the page, and it's my favorite thing to write. It's really funny.
And then when you write it, does the sort of battleship start going that way?
It will go that. It very rarely is wrong. It's just figuring out how to get there is not so easy. That darn myth.
That's why I am Sister right now. It's terrible. Who else wants to talk a little bit about their endings?
Well, I never know certainly what the mystery ending is. I usually don't figure out exactly what the mystery is until I'm about halfway through. And honestly, Lucy, if I wrote, I do know where the personal story is going to wind up. I know where I want that to end. And I often have that whole scene in my head. But if I wrote it, I'm afraid I would never finish the book because it would take all the steam out. For me, it's sort of like, it's out there, it's waiting for me. I just have to write another, 120 more pages and then I can get to it.
But what if you forget it? That's the trouble. You might have this wonderful scene and then you get there and you can't remember a damn word.
Oh, if you can't remember it, then it wasn't good in the first place, right? That's what that's what it goes.
You gotta write it down when you get them.
Yeah,
you have to, exactly. Who else wants to? Rhys, did you make your ending? I guess we can't give that away.
Well, the fact that it's based on Rebecca means there's a certain framework to my plot, So I sort of knew what had to happen in the end. I didn't know who done it. I really didn't for a lot of the book, and I kept thinking, oh yeah, well you look guilty, and then so I was figuring out as much as Georgie was, and then we got to the end, and I realized, oh yes, of course. So that was kind of, when I don't know, I think the book's much better because then I'm not being the puppet master, making the characters do things.
You're not shepherding the people toward the end.
I'm sort of going, oh, don't go in that room. Then I'm enjoying it too. So that was that. I knew at the end there's got to be this big scene, and obviously something's got to happen. Which if you read Rebecca, you know what's got to happen. But
I mean, Hallie, I know you really thought about your ending and you really considered that. How did you not? So you didn't know?
I think at the beginning, and when I started writing, I thought I knew how it was going to end, and I was wrong. Because when I got to the end and I ended it that way, I couldn't figure out how the mystery would have worked. I mean, none of the pieces fit together. So, it's like, wait a minute, how did that person show up at the restaurant on this day when he was dead 3 days earlier?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, a different kind of book.
What happened to the car? I just had all of these holes in the plot. And I ended up really having to look at the story. What happened versus the order in which I revealed it to the reader.
Okay.
That's what you do in a mystery, is you have an idea of what happened, and then you reveal it in a confusing way so that the reader is gobsmacked at the ending. But I didn't know what the story was.
So when you figured it out, was there a real moment when you thought, oh, the Rubik's Cube is clicked into place?
Yeah, definitely. But you go back and God help you if you read your Amazon reviews. There's always someone that says, what about the,
No reading reviews.
Not about it.
Don't read them.
But I mean, Jenn, your book is sort of Eat, Pray, Love meets Mamma Mia. And we all wonder, in Mamma Mia, which person is it? Did you know what was going to happen in the end to Chelsea?
I don't know. I don't know where the book. I don't understand you people. I'm daughter. I know everything. I am God. No, I'm kidding. No, I am a puppet master, and then very rarely do they stray. I don't have time for that nonsense. No, I work off an outline for romance, women's fiction, mysteries. I know exactly who did it, why they did it, and then I just kind of work backwards.
So you write that in advance, and you have this in front of you, a real outline?
Yeah, I work off. The few times I've deviated from the outline, it didn't go well.
So this is like so different from the way my head works. But how long does it take you to do the outline? Because I feel like if I did an outline, like I'd spend 4 months doing the outline just to figure out what happened.
And how do you know what happens until it happens?
Right.
I write one book every 3 months. I don't have to read those. We don't have that kind of time.
Look at Deb. She's like going crazy.
No, I write an outline. Usually it takes, well, some books are easier than others, but we're 2 weeks to a month maximum, and then I'm off and running with the book.
Wow.
Can you come over?
Totally.
Debs, what about you? Do you know the ending? Please tell us.
Yeah, I do. I usually, in a good feast, I knew who did it, why they did it, how they did it, and I usually do. I usually work that out beforehand, but I don't do Jenn's level of outlining. But I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know how I'm logically going to get my characters to come to the same solution, and how all the dramatic things are going to play out. So I mean, that's fun. Those are the things that you find out as you write. But I can't imagine not having any idea where the story was going.
Well, people say to me, they were so surprised at the end of the book, and I'm like, yeah, wasn't that a surprise? I surprised myself. But we do know what the end of this is going to be, because Barbara is now smiling at us like the end of this is going to be, Barbara is going to wrap us up. We'd all just thank you. This has been
Thank
the
you.
greatest of days.
One more time. I wish we could see all our Jungle Reds too.
Yeah.
Well,
And see who's out there in the audience.
there are a lot of people in the audience, and I can distill the questions into two, because many of them are just comments about how they love your books, or they're fans, or they enjoyed certain parts. You can actually read the comments when you watch the video on Facebook, so each of you can see what it is. I couldn't figure out how to get back on screen, so I had to call for tech support, but now I'm back. So what I'd like to ask you to do, because the two big questions are, once again, could you tell us what book you are now talking about? And I have copies of them, so I too can hold them up. And then please tell us what you are actually working on next, because all fans would like to leave the program confident that you will produce another book. So I'm just going to go around the screen. Lucy, your book is over there. It's called Key Lime Crime. Hold it up. Right. So Lucy Burdette, Key Lime Crime, and what is it you're working on for your next book?
I'm working on number 11. It's due in 10 days. And it takes place in Scotland, but I don't have a title yet. But it is close to being finished.
Yeah, you mentioned the deadline more than once, so I figure you're nervous. But that's how it goes. So Jenn, you are holding up Paris is always a good idea. But I can tell you that on September the 5th, Jenn will be back at the Poison Pen with Kate Carlisle and Paige Shelton to talk about her library lovers mystery, which is called, Jenn?
One for the books.
One for the books. And which number in the library lovers series is it?
I think it's 11.
Awesome. And then is the way you work, you'll have another book out, what, for Christmas?
No, but I am writing the next cupcake bakery mystery, For Better or Worse, that comes out next May.
Oh, come on. Seriously? For bad? Never mind. Okay. And I love the cupcake books because they are based really upon the sprinkles here in Scottsdale. So it's a local series, which is wonderful. Hallie, your book is called Careful What You Wish For. What are you working on?
I am working on a novel set in Brooklyn, 3 generations of women living in a brownstone. I have no idea how it ends.
Right. Well, you've already told us that, so that's exciting. And I do think that the tension between people who know where they're going and people who would prefer not to is always fascinating. Every single writer has a different process, and there's I think what works for you is absolutely the right process for you. It doesn't really matter what other people are doing. Deborah, I have a copy right here with a gold, not brown cover.
Yes, the gold cover.
It shows better. It shows better here as the gold. But it's
You got
called
the white.
A Bitter Feast. And one comment is they hope it won't take too long for you to write another one, which is also addressed to Julia. So tell us, sorry, Julia. What are you working on, Deb? So when do you think it will come out?
I am working on number 19, the next book in the series, and it has a title, but I don't think my publisher is ready to release the title yet. And it is due on the 1st of December, so wish me luck. And it's set in central London and Bloomsbury, and there is stabbing, and that's probably all we need to know.
That's really exciting. Rhys, what is your book called?
It's called The Last Mrs. Summers.
It's over here. And
Yes.
I know in February you will be back with me and we will be talking about Venice.
Yes, I think it's going to be April. I think they put it to April now. So,
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I forgot.
So that will be, it's a big standalone set in 3 different time periods called the Venice Sketchbook. And if you actually look on my website now, I think there should be, the cover is the most
The
gorgeous
cover's
cover
beautiful.
I've ever seen.
Right.
It
It's
is gorgeous. You just
Yeah.
melt and go Venice, So, of course, I had to do some grueling research in Venice last year, but we suffer for our craft along the way.
It really is amazing. I will just mention, because last night, excuse me, we finished watching at home, which is where we watch everything, the 3 episodes of Endeavor, the early Inspector Morse, and it begins and it ends in Venice with some beautiful shots. So if you're missing Venice, you can tune in to PBS, watch Endeavor, and you can see Sean Evans, who plays Endeavor on the Grand Canal in the Opera House. It made me think of you, Rhys.
Without the mustache.
Yes. So, Julia, you were the one, particularly everybody's hoping you will produce the new book somewhat sooner.
Yeah.
Nag.
I think what you can tell is I'm the only person who didn't have a copy of my own book
Here,
with me.
I have
can
it. Here it
I've got a
is.
book. Thank you. I've got a bookshelf here, and I can see Hank's book, and I've got Eat, Pray, Paris Love, and I've got Rhys's new book, but I do not have my own. That's in another room. What I'm working on is, the working title is At Midnight Comes the Cry. And it takes place over the 4 weeks of Advent. Those are the 4 weeks before Christmas in the Catholic and the Anglican church year. And it is also due on December 1st.
Ooh.
Will I get there? Stay tuned. Who knows? It's always a mystery when it comes to me and deadlines.
There's more suspense.
I'm like the anti-Jen. Jen and I are like the same person, but we were split into completely opposite parts.
True, totally true.
This is really a program of suspense now that you've listened to all that. Julia's book is called Hid from Our Eyes. And finally, Hank, our wonderful moderator.
Oh, thank you. We had fun. This is great. And it's so nice to see all of your darling faces. I just miss you. And all of you who are in the audience, the people who come to Jungle Red every day. We can't see your comments right now, or we'd be typing answers to you. But the people who backlog and the guests and the visitors and the commenters, Jungle Red would not be Jungle Red without you. So we are incredibly grateful.
Very good.
Yeah. My book, The First to Lie, what was the question? Oh, what am I working on now? Oh, my new book is due September the 15th. That is surely going to happen. It has a title, which I can't tell you, but trust me, my first standalone is about truth, and the murder list, the second standalone is about justice, and The First to Lie is about family loyalty and obsession. Then I think the new book is about celebrity and fame and privacy, and when you become a person who's in the public spotlight, how can that affect you and your family? I hope. I mean,
Dr. Fauci in it?
Dr. Fauci's in everything. Dr. Fauci is in every moment.
Well, ladies, it's really been a pleasure. I want to thank all of you who have spent this hour with us this afternoon. If you missed anything, not only is the video going to stay on Facebook, but there will be a podcast tomorrow and you can get to it on the Poison Pen podcast page on our website, and you can listen to it. You can recommend it to people. And naturally, if you feel like purchasing one of the books, we'd be delighted to sell it to you. And I'm happy to say that I think that all of the authors on the screen will be here for their next books in one form or another, right?
Or another.
But maybe we should do like a Christmas reprise of this. Maybe we should have a Christmas party.
Yes.
Would you like to do that?
Sure.
Okay, that sounds
Sign us
like.
up.
Yep, we'll do it, and we'll have a virtual punch or something of the sort, right?
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yes,
Anyway,
definitely.
thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of the weekend.